What's the deal with key risk indicators in project management? Isn't that an enterprise management thing? Well, some things you can do with that. List them, quantify them, and keep an eye out for new ones. By the way, if you've been enjoying or getting value out of our approach, please like and subscribe. We release new videos on a pretty regular basis. And if you have some specific topics that you would like us to address, please let me know. My contact information is always at the end of the video. Okay, key risk indicators. Now, for some people, the easiest way to think of a key risk indicator is to think of it this way. Think of it as a trigger for possible performance failure. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. In order for you to be able to spot the triggers for possible performance failures, you have to know what it is that your project's product ultimately is supposed to be doing to begin with. So the performance has to do with whether or not we're going to be able to meet the project's objectives, which should be right in line with your client's objectives, your sponsor's objective. So you can't list them if you don't know what they are. Look, sitting down and figuring out what performance levels are going to be required in order to achieve the objectives of your sponsor, your client, their user groups, well, that's a little bit of, advanced planning. Huh. Wow, sounds like a great topic for project managers, don't you think? The other thing that this does is it really speaks to your looking at all of the different areas of project management, product management, stakeholder management, and organizational awareness. Massive? Yeah, but you're probably doing a little bit of this, if not a lot of it, already. So why would we want to look for key risk indicators? Well, as I said, once you know what the performance level has to be in order for you to be able to achieve your client and sponsor's objectives, the project's objectives, this will be a way of getting early warning signals that perhaps that performance level isn't being held. Now, a lot of times people say, well, isn't a team member's performance level kind of well, that would be, strictly speaking, be a project manager's question, not a project leader's question. So be very clear. As long as they're on your team, you're responsible for their performance level on the project. And if it spills over to their regular work, that's not a bad thing. So what are the performance levels that are going to be required? Is there a metric that you have in place that says how many times we're going to have to attempt doing this before we get a prototype? Is there a metric for how well people are working together? i.e., come on, really? Do you think that it's good collaboration when one person is having to chase another around and around via Zoom or phone call or text messages? No, not really. More than 2 attempts that go by without any satisfactory contact. It's a pretty easy thing to measure. And it's a key risk indicator that perhaps people are not playing well together. Make sense? So build a list of them and then quantify it. You don't have to get ultra scientific or ultra mathematically accurate. And I know right about now, a couple of people are going, you don't? Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. For now, let's just stick with round numbers. As an example, every time there's contact that is unsatisfactory, think of that as 5 minutes on either side, 5 minutes for the sender, 5 minutes for the receiver. And think of it as a day of potential loss on the schedule for their work package deliverable. Am I being pessimistic? Actually, no. As is frequently my want, I'm actually being optimistic that only a day will pass before they finally do connect with each other, figure out how to solve the problem, and execute. But with time zone differences, it could be longer. What you want to do is be able to quantify the risk indicators so you know which ones you want to keep a particular eye out for. Now, people say, well, I'm always looking at that. I am always looking at that. And I get that. But if you've never actually documented it, how can you share it with your sponsor, with your other key stakeholders who are invested in the performance level of your project team? You kind of can't. But here's the other thing, by making this a conscious part of your project management, your leadership shows through and you're setting expectations. Always an important thing when motivating and keeping a team cohesive. And you may think, well, this is just wonderful. She's just adding yet another layer onto our responsibilities. Does she think we have boatloads of spare time? No, I'm pretty convinced you don't. As a matter of fact, one of the things I worry about is whether or not you have any spare time. Not good for you. People talk a lot about work life balance. I tend to think of it as work life integration instead. Sometimes we just don't get to decide that for these 45 minutes, we're going to be the professional version of us. And for the next 15 minutes after that, we're going to be the personal version of us, maybe catching up on a few personal emails. And after that, there's an hour of being the personal us who's in a partnership, or who's the parent, or who's the caretaker. You kind of get my drift there, right? So, no, I don't think that you have copious commercial quantities of spare time. What I do think is you want to be able to use your time as productively as possible. And this is a great way of establishing whether or not you have project objectives clearly as a priority when you speak with your stakeholders, your sponsor, and honestly, when I started doing this, it was accidental. We've been talking about all sorts of things, and somebody mentioned that the HR department was going to start instituting metrics so that they could establish key risk indicators. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I could do that with my team. So I picked two areas for each team member, and I talked to them about it, areas that they were doing a great job at, and areas where I really could use it if they could up their performance levels a little bit. And I knew that as strong performers and as committed professionals, it probably would make them feel a little bit better as well when we started doing that. It wasn't a massive effort in documentation, but something interesting happened along the line. We were talking about it, we were documenting it. And as a result, it became something that we managed, a process that we managed that helped us lead each other as teammates. Not a bad idea. As a result, the team's cohesiveness went up. What went down were the number of times people were having a hard time getting somebody else to answer the phone or jump on a quick conference call. Yes, that's what we called them in those days because they were primarily conference calls. We call the thing that we all do now Multimedia conferencing. I know. Oh, wow, huh. At the end of that very long day, we're always talking about the end of. What it meant was my team meeting expectations of schedule and budget with a great deal less stress and with a little bit to spare. Not a bad thing. What's important, though, is that you also keep an eye on things on a regular basis and look for other potential key risk indicators. Because remember, your project is interdependent and interrelated with all sorts of other efforts that are going on in your organization. And that means that their key risk indicators, their performance expectations, well, those matter for your project too. Leadership driven project management. It's about the people, but our lessons are geared primarily to giving you a couple of really concrete things that you can do. In this one, list your key risk indicators, quantify those key risk indicators, and keep an eye on them. Keep a lookout for the potential of a key risk indicator on another project that is interrelated with yours, maybe needing a look. If you like this approach, please think about looking up our group on Facebook. Again, it's Leadership Driven Project Management Academy on the Facebook page. I'm KimiKSP, and I'm delighted to have had you join us. Please come again.